by Chasing the Rainbows with your host, Bernice Quisenberry.
This week's podcast episode is called Guilt, Shame, and the Blame Game. And this is part one of a two-part series. And it is the Bree and B segment.
Well, hey there.
Hey, Bree. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we appreciate you so much. So what we are trying to address during this segment is some feelings us fellow survivors have towards ourselves naturally after we go through miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant loss. These come up a lot when we're doing our daily support groups, and we know that we should, right, that woulda, coulda, shoulda, not put these on ourselves. And others tell us why, like we should not feel this way, but we do, and it just happens. And our feelings are valid and need to be talked about and cried about out loud.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's really important to let people know that it is normal to feel these feelings and to let yourself feel them, and there's no shame in it.
Absolutely not. And, you know, the thing is, like we call it the blame game a lot. Like I say that, like blaming myself for this, that, and the other thing, especially like being the mom, the birthing person, you know, and taking that on. But yeah, that guilt and shame, it'll just eat at you.
It's terrible. I think that guilt and shame is probably the two biggest things I struggled with. And I feel like they kind of go hand in hand.
Right.
So yeah, let's dive into some of these.
Right. And I think, you know, too, us actually being with other survivors who understand this and talking about with them makes us feel valid. And honestly, it cuts my pain in half.
Less crazy. I feel less crazy when I hear somebody else say, oh yeah, I felt that way too. I'm like, okay, I mean, I'm sorry you felt that too.
Yes.
But it validates you.
It does.
It makes you feel less crazy.
100%. So I was told early on in my grieving process to not feel like this. And like, you should not feel guilt because that is the admission that you willingly or intentionally did something wrong to cause this. And it's not that, but like here to say that both guilt and shame are two core related emotions often emerged following trauma and play an important role in the development and maintenance of PTSD.
Yeah, you know, and it's so true when you said that guilt is almost like you're admitting that you willingly did something wrong.
Yes.
And when it comes to trauma though,
Yes.
you didn't do anything wrong. It was a traumatic event. And so we feel guilty. Like we did do something wrong, but we didn't.
Right. And it like fuels it. Like it almost fuels our PTSD, our traumas and all of that. And it triggers like, because you know, what triggers our like PTSD and things like that is an external event that happened. And it's perceived as a threat to one's self-survival.
Yeah.
Like when you look at it like that, right?
That's true.
So like, as such, like us survivors of these traumatic events, like often endure these like, you know, negative self-related emotions. And it's attributed the event's negative outcomes, and it's to like actions, our character, who we are.
Yeah.
Like it plays in every single role of our being.
That's
after
so
we
true.
go through this.
It totally messes with you. Like
Yes.
any confidence you had in yourself before, anything gone, completely gone. It does. It doesn't just affect like the events or what happened during those events,
Right.
but it affects ongoing, like moving forward. And I think those are emotions you have to talk through and work through because it can weigh you down, and you can continue to kind of like beat yourself down about it.
Absolutely. And it changed me to my core of the person that I was. And I'll never be that same person that I was before Brooke.
Yeah.
You know, or before like traumatic events and things like that. And, you know, miscarriage, stillbirth, infant loss are classified as traumatic life events, and they're being looked at as traumas now, which is wonderful because not the events themselves, of course, but that they're actually being looked at like this because now they're being taken more seriously.
Yeah.
And our society should recognize them this way, and how we support and, you know, treat people and things like that have been through these kind of traumatic events.
Yeah, because I mean, I think we do a good job of treating a woman physically after she's given birth, but we don't do a great job of treating the mental and emotional part.
Right.
And you want to treat the whole being, and that includes the mental and physical, or the mental, physical, and emotional part. And yeah, we don't do a good job at that.
No, the whole encompassing, because, you know, if one of those things is out of whack or like we're like,
it affects one or the other.
Yes, it affects all of it then, right? And like, you know, as our society has taught us, like we minimize and we need to brush these kind of griefs like under a rug and keep moving on because no one likes to address baby loss. It's uncomfortable, it's awkward, and it's horrific when you think about it because an innocent baby was taken from us way too soon.
Yeah.
So no one wants to talk about. So that's why we are talking about this out loud and coming out with it all.
Yep.
And you know, what's interesting is, and I've had people tell me this, you know, they've been through birth traumas and, you know, birthing never goes as planned.
Yeah. Not the truth.
You know, I wish my birth plans always went like they should have. But, you know, but at the end of that, you know, when you get your baby and you get to hold your baby in your arms, I've heard people say that, you know, it helps a little bit, you know, and not to say that they'll ever forget what happened or anything like that, but having your baby at the end does.
Well, it's like the prize at the end of it,
Yes.
you know, like you
Yes.
have that baby and there's nothing. When we lost, I remember Emma in particular, when we lost Emma, I remember going through the labor pains and all that. And I vividly remember laying there thinking, my body is going through all of this right now for what?
Right.
Like I knew I was going to be delivering my child who had passed. And like, I'm putting myself through all this and I don't have a choice because
Right.
I have to deliver her.
Right.
And for what?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing other than like trauma.
Exactly. Just like added on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And exactly.
And I
awful.
I also remember just feeling like very guilty, like my body failed me
Yes.
because I should have been able to
Right.
keep her safe and like protect her. And like there was a lot of guilt and shame around that, embarrassment that my body couldn't do that.
Right. And I mean, that's just such a nice segue, Brie, like you said, because into like our topics for today, because that is like feeling like my womb, right? Like keeping my baby safe in there, like giving her this safe space where, you know, she can grow and, you know, up until delivery and just getting nourishment from me and, you know, providing for her. And then when that doesn't happen, you're like, how did my body fail me?
Yeah. And I feel like, and I don't think anybody ever looked at me like this, but like, I feel like people were looking at me like, oh, she couldn't handle it. Like her body couldn't manage.
Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Like what's wrong that your body couldn't. And this is, of course, like I'm in a clearer headspace now. And I know that's not true, but like at the time I definitely felt that way.
Yes.
That people looked at me like with,
like, this is your
like,
fault.
Yeah. This is your fault. And like, poor you. And
Yes.
you know, it's embarrassing.
Yeah, and like what's wrong with you? Yeah, exactly. And it is. It's like that. And that goes hand in hand too. Like when we were trying to get pregnant and leading up to like even getting to that point of carrying a baby, I was like, I had so much like guilt, shame with that because it was like looking at like what were the potential causes of this? Is it because I was on a high estrogen pill, you know, birth control back in my early 20s, and you know, did that cause like some secondary infertility? Did like surgeries to remove cysts and fibroids with scar tissue cause my secondary infertility? And these are all probable causes.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm like, but did I need to have those surgeries? Did I need to be on this birth control pill to regulate my periods? Like, did I have to do these things? But, you know, during that time, these all felt right to do until it came up against having a baby or trying to have a baby.
Yeah. And we had something similar because we struggled with secondary infertility, and I was on the birth control pill early on in life too. And, and then we had 4 early miscarriages. Later to find out it was because I had developed a fibroid, a huge adhesion formed in my uterus. My doctor actually said it was the largest he's ever seen.
Wow.
So it was formed because when we had Landon, I had to have a DNC afterwards. And I guess it was, my uterus was aggressively scraped, is the words I was told. And it caused my uterus to literally stick together and form 2 separate cavities. So each baby, there was 4 babies we lost because they would grow. Everything was great. And they would grow to about 8 or 9 weeks and then they would die. And it was because there was no room to grow because my uterus was literally cut in half.
Oh my gosh.
So like I struggle with the guilt and, you know, of should I have, did I need that DNC? Should I have like maybe thought of this and said something to the doctor and explored this avenue sooner and we could have saved those babies? And it was just a lot of guilt for myself of I should have done something different. And those are 4 babies that I might not have lost, you know?
I know. But, and I think like now thinking about it too, though, we rely so heavily on our medical professionals to do right by us and our bodies that, but of course you're going to feel that way. I would too.
Yeah. And they didn't, they did end up exploring after, but like how many is too many before you start exploring?
Right.
That's another thing that I think was frustrating is like, they're like, okay, well, we'll just keep trying again. And we struggled to get pregnant a lot. And then it's like, okay, well, was number 4 was that the cap of like, okay, now we need to do something more invasive to see if there's something going on? Like, shouldn't have
4 losses? Like, why didn't 1 do enough? You know what I mean?
But
I get it.
I get it too, and like I understand why you can't just every miscarriage go in and like guns a-blazing and do every invasive procedure to find out what's going on. But I feel like I could have maybe spoke up a little more, or I didn't. I try to give myself some grace though, because I didn't know.
Right.
You know, I know now.
Yes.
So it's easy to say that now. Yes. But in the moment, I thought I was doing what was best, and that is all we can do. And we cannot blame ourselves for not doing something different, because we were doing the best we could with the information we had at the time.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, and for me, when everything went down, like I didn't have time to research. Like none of us do, right? When the losses are happening
it's
and
like
the whirlwind of
events. I don't have energy for that.
Exactly. So you're going off of whatever you're being told at that point. And, but it does come back to then looking back. And that's when you leave the hospital empty armed, and then you're looking like, with my rear view mirror, and I'm seeing all of this, like I have to process it and like go through these feelings, because I'm going to have them, because I'm like, I could have done a lot of things differently, in my opinion.
Like what kind of things do you think
you
feel like you should have done differently? Because I agree. I have those as well. I'm just curious what yours are.
Right. So I'll jump into that. So my biggest thing was when Brooke was in the NICU. Okay. So some of you on here have heard my story. We were 28 weeks when we had to deliver Brooke, very quickly, unexpected, based on some health complications that were happening. My placenta was eroding, less than 1% that happens to from old blood, yada, yada, yada. But so when that happened, and they brought her out, we knew 2 days leading up to our delivery that we were going into a 3-level NICU. Now, when we heard that, we were like, okay, well, they said like the survival rate of a 28-week-old is pretty high. I think it's like 80% or something. Don't quote me on it. But, and they said, or 90% even, but it gave us a bigger chance that, she was going to be 28 weeks. That's why we held off 2 days till we exactly were to deliver her. So a 3-level NICU, we're like, okay, so you guys can do everything here. And they said, yes, we can do everything here except for perform surgery. And we didn't think, because they were like, listen, everything, she's looking great. Like from the ultrasound, she's measuring great, everything, there wasn't really any signs. She came out and all she needed was just a little oxygen or CPAP, and that was it. And she looked great. Like no, her lungs were fully developed, nothing. But then we were in the NICU, and the day that her belly hardened and when she passed, we both know that if we were at a 4-level NICU and they performed surgery and removed the bowel that started to die off, even though she was smaller and she was like a little, like 5 pounds, but she was growing every day, every week. But still, that she would have been saved. Now we would have had issues with her immune system and things like that. Who cares?
Right.
Like I want my
here.
baby. Yeah, she 100% would have been here. So my husband and I beat ourselves up. Well, at least I shouldn't speak for him, but we did at that time, and I still do, because I'm like, if we would have been at a 4-level NICU and had that done, we like this could be, and who knows, like I don't have a crystal ball or anything, but she'd be here with us. Like we just feel that in our heart of hearts, and it sucks.
That sucks.
It's hard to live with.
It really is. That's what it comes down to. It just sucks.
It really does. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like one of those things that. I can sit here and tell you, well, you did what you thought was best. But there was no indication that anything would have been wrong that would have made you been like, well, maybe we need to, or even the doctors think we need to put you to a level 4.
Exactly. Exactly.
But now knowing what you know,
yes,
like it's like circumstantial. If you would have been
I would
somewhere
ask for
else,
a transport. Right.
Something could have been different, and that's hard to live with.
It is so hard to live with. And I mean, Bree, have you ever experienced anything like that?
With as far as
like any of your babies that you've lost that you felt like, is there something more you could have done? Or
oh my gosh, 100%. Like I know, well, with Landon, so Dr. Wu had spoken.
Right. Yeah.
I had asked her a question about Landon, who developed Fifth's disease. My daughter had contracted it. I ended up contracting it. I was asymptomatic, no symptoms at all. It crossed over to my placenta and ended up killing him.
Yeah.
And I went to the doctor for my daughter, and she was misdiagnosed. And I feel like if I would have advocated and maybe even once she was finally diagnosed, called my doctor and like pushed for an ultrasound or pushed for more testing to be done, I could have possibly saved him, because it sounds like he needed a blood transfusion.
Right.
Based off of the question that I had asked Dr. Wu. And if it would have been possible, of course she hasn't looked at my chart and doesn't know like the exact specifics of my situation, but like if there's even a chance that he could have been saved had I spoken up.
Right.
But I try to tell myself, like, there's nothing I could have. In the moment, I did what I did.
Yeah.
And I didn't know any better. I didn't realize that who would have thought, like, a common childhood illness could have killed my son, you know?
That's exactly right.
And also, then with Emma, same thing. Like, she passed away because the cord was wrapped around her neck 3 times. And I remember, like, I was so sick with bronchitis leading up to that delivery, and I coughed and coughed and coughed. And I know I've been told a million times, like, that doesn't cause, the baby, but I vividly remember her like flipping around in my belly.
Yes.
And I feel like I should have taken cough medicine, or I should have,
I know.
there's just all these hindsight's 2020. It always is. And it will eat you alive if you allow it to, because, of course, everything in our lives, no matter what it is, bad situations, you come out of it knowing more than what you did when you entered the situation. And who wouldn't change things if they could?
Yes.
Any traumatic events you've been through, of course you would change stuff. But in the moment, you did the best you could, and you did what you thought was right. And I've learned to give myself some grace with that, and not let it eat at me. Of course, I still think about it, and there's moments where, like, gosh, they could be here, and
I know, and how different our lives would be. Just thinking about them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I struggle with it too.
No, I know what you mean, and I mean, it just makes sense with everything that we've been through and experienced with it. And how, like, we're processing it, right? And, like, working through all of the emotions. And it even comes up years later.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, Landon's been 10 years next month, and Emma's been 17. Or not 17, I'm sorry, 7 years.
Yes,
it feels like 17 sometimes, just because it seems like yesterday, but also 17 years ago.
Right,
it's just crazy how much it can still, all these years later, kind of... It just changes who you are. Really I'm definitely not the same person I was November of 2013 as I was, from December of 2013 on. Like, I'm definitely a totally different person because of all the things that we've been through and all the losses and just the trauma around it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it does. It like when you hear somebody's story and you like get to know them and to hear everything that they've been through, you're like, wow, it's really profound. And I mean, but it's somebody else's survival guide now.
Yeah.
Like as other survivors are listening in and hearing us, it's like, how do we do things or what did we go through so they can at least relate to us? Because I know, like, when I was going through these things, like, I had you to talk to, I had a few others, but in the moments of the day to day, I was like, am I crazy for thinking this? Like, is this normal? Or like, why am I having these feelings? And working through it in therapy, working it through with other survivors really gave me that hope to keep holding, on and knowing that it wasn't going to be this constant roller coaster every day.
Correct. It gives you some hope that there's light at the end of that tunnel, that deep, deep, dark tunnel that you're going through right now. Because it gets pretty dark and it gets pretty deep.
Oh, yeah.
Some days.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, and just going back to like my body doesn't work how it should. And everyone around me is easily getting pregnant and there's something wrong with me. And did I do something to cause this? Like pregnancy issues, not being able to stay pregnant.
Yeah.
Like all those emotions.
I felt like I was broken. Like something wasn't working. Like I need to change the battery or like something was
seriously
wrong.
though, like under
I
your
need an
hood,
oil
you need,
change or something.
Yes.
Like it just felt like, and I felt embarrassed and ashamed of that.
Right.
Like I did, like again, the guilt.
Like
of,
we have
like,
control over our bodies.
Like it was intentional or something, but obviously it's not intentional. But yeah, I felt a lot of shame that I could not carry a baby or I could not get pregnant.
Right.
Like I was young. My family are like fertile myrtles. Like what's wrong with me?
And you're seeing all of it. And it's hard to not compare yourself in the midst of when all we can do is think about, because we're trying to get pregnant. We're trying to keep our babies inside healthy, and growing. And when that's not happening, it's like, and you're seeing all these others and it's so
I struggle
difficult.
with jealousy so bad.
Me too.
Everyone and their mom can get pregnant except for me.
Yes.
But I also felt a lot of, I thought people were looking at me like, what's wrong with her too?
Yes. It's that shame again.
It's the shame. Yeah. Like I definitely.
Like there has to be something wrong.
Yes.
She's doing something wrong. She's like doing something behind the scenes that no one knows about, and that's why she can't stay pregnant.
Yes. Yeah. And I
she has these issues that she's not talking about or sharing, and it just can't just keep happening, and it does.
And it was embarrassing. Yeah, it's embarrassing. Like it made me feel small.
Right.
And
almost insignificant. Like I hate to say it like that, but that's how I felt. Like especially when we had that year and a half of just trying. It was like that insignificance. Like what is wrong with and who am I?
Yeah.
Like, and am I even meant to be like a mom to another baby? You know what I mean? Like all those thoughts go through, and it's so hard.
It's so hard. I know. I really struggle with that, and just the thoughts of, and I feel like the pressure of not just I was putting on myself, but I felt like people were now. I got to a certain point of trying, and then people were. I feel like people are watching. Like, is she pregnant yet? Are you pregnant yet? And it's like added pressure to get pregnant, which stresses you out more, which makes you not get pregnant.
Which is so, I was just going to say, because like one of the things was too, like, is it because like I felt so like guilty and ashamed? Like, is it because of my like stress, my emotional, physical, mental stress?
The stress can absolutely cause you to not get pregnant. Like,
it does.
And it's so funny, not funny, obviously not using funny because it's funny, but it's interesting, I guess ironic. I should say. Yeah, that like, you try to get pregnant, and then you put more and more pressure on, and like my poor husband, the pressure on him.
Oh,
too.
performance anxiety.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's a whole nother topic.
Especially with all the tracking and doing all of it. Like, making sure, like, I'm ovulating, let's go, like now.
Yeah. Yep. I would send him a text of like the smiley face that I'm ovulating, and I'm like, it's go time, and like how romantic, right?
Right.
But like, it's that added stress, and then knowing that everyone else was just watching and waiting, like waiting for the announcement, and because they know you're trying. But then also everyone's saying, well, if you don't stress out, this will happen. Or like, if like, okay, don't tell me not to stress. You're just adding making more stress. Yeah, you telling me not to stress is right.
Well, and I'm already feeling it because you just said that to me. Like,
and what I was gonna say is
my blood pressure.
What's interesting is that we did get to a point where after 5 years of trying, we were like, I was just emotionally, physically, financially done. Like I couldn't do it anymore. I had nothing left in me.
You can't endure anything else at that point. And like any other like things thrown at you.
No, I was just, I couldn't handle it. And for my own mental health and save our marriage.
Yes.
It was like, we just waved the white flag and we're like, okay, we're done. Guess who got pregnant the next month? Yours truly. And I really think a lot of it was because I released all that stress of trying.
Yes.
And there it happened. Now, of course, that's not the story for everybody, but that was my story. And I think stress really can play a big role, and that pressure you feel to make it happen, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you.
Right. And I know, I just don't like hearing when like when someone said to us, like, just stop stressing and it'll happen.
Yeah.
And I was like, don't tell me that.
No.
Like, because that's not the truth for
That is
everybody.
not-
Like, it was like the way it worked out for like you and Justin
Yeah.
and things like that. But
But it
that's
wasn't
not-
because people were telling us don't
Yes,
stress. It was
yes.
because we were at the end of our rope with trying.
Right.
But I did get a lot of the just don't stress, just relax. I'm like,
Yes.
seriously? Like
Yeah.
in any situation, if you tell us somebody's stressed out, you tell them not
Yes.
to stress, you really think you just saying those
And with
words
all
are going to
the
make them not
traumas
stress?
that you just went through, and
Yes.
like the recurring losses,
Yes.
like all of it. It's just
Well, yeah, because then there's the added like, okay, if we get pregnant, are we going to lose this one too?
exactly. And
I
then
mean,
telling your older daughter.
well,
and,
that's
like,
what I was going
all
to
of
say.
that.
So Ella, she, we had so many losses that
Yeah.
I would get pregnant and we would get to a point where like, okay, we feel comfortable telling her and we would tell her. And then like a week later, she'll say to us, I remember one time she said to us, she's like, when's this baby going to die?
Yeah.
Because
Innocently
to her,
too.
oh, totally innocently,
Yeah.
because to her, that's what happened.
happens.
Mommy got pregnant, baby died. Like to her, the thought of bringing a baby home was foreign because she
Right.
had
All
she
she's
never
seen.
experienced it.
Yeah.
So there was that added stress and pressure too of this child that I had desperately wanted a sibling.
Yes.
So like I felt like I need to provide that for her.
Yeah.
So that was just another level of
I know.
stress
Added
added
stress.
to it.
Well, yeah, and especially like you want to include them in because you want to get them excited that you're pregnant and you know that you're expecting and things like that. But then it just adds to
Just
that whole
one more.
other dynamic, especially. And then we have guilt from when we're trying to grieve that loss and then bringing in our
Yep.
children too.
Yep,
Oh, my
100%.
goodness.
I know there's so many layers to it, and
It really is. It's truly a lot. But that brings us to the end of our first segment. We just thank you all for tuning in, and we will be on here for our second segment next week. So please listen in on that as we dive in deeper, to the guilt, shame, and blame game. And also, follow and subscribe to our podcast to help us reach more survivors. And we are always with you, fertility loss, pregnancy loss, and baby loss survivors.
thanks for listening.
Thank you.